Sigler for Personalities in the News. This show is dedicated to the memory of John Castle, who started Personalities in the News in 1964 through 2003 on several local stations. John was a noted advocate of the Constitution and a Republican. The format of this program is educational in nature and based on the constitutions of the United States of America and the Republic of California, as well as special guests based on their topics being presented. The program today is about how the actions of attorneys and lawyers and the changes in the way the systems have been changed and altered affect the outcomes of justice and due process in our system, and what the common thread is in all of them, because there is one. There will be time for call-in questions. We ask that you please keep them on today's topic. Call in 442-1680, that's talk radio, after the first break. The opinions of our co-hosts are based upon legal, lawful court actions. Our program this evening is hosted by myself and our co-host, Sue Ann Caesar by telephone, and Steve Hempfling. Welcome to Personalities in the News. Are you on, Steve? I lost you for a second or two, but we'll come.
Can you hear me now?
There, now we can hear you. You're going over the air.
All right. Well, I'm glad to be on. We're going to have a pretty good program here today.
Yeah, I think so. We're going to talk about many things, mostly based on the programs that we have been presenting to kind of bring people back up to speed, because if you don't say the same thing every time, it kind of gets lost and forgotten. So we're going to review a lot of things this evening. Why don't you start off with your part of it, income tax or laws or attorneys or wherever you want to go?
Well, there's so much to talk about, but I always like to at least get in a little bit of a plug on the Constitution. I mean, this is the formula, and we've got to keep hammering this, and people have got to start to read this. The schools do not teach this document anymore. This is the formula that made the greatest country the world has ever seen. When we followed this, America became the most powerful nation in the world. Industrial, financial, the middle class. There was no other country that had so much wealth by the average person in any country in the world. And that's all changing now. You got people homeless, you got all these problems, and in my opinion, because they're not following this Constitution. I know they talk about it sometimes, even Nancy Pelosi, which I don't believe has ever read it, talks about it every day. And that same is true for the legislature. Governor Newsom here in California, and probably out of 120 elected officials, I mean, I think I'd be pretty bold or maybe optimistic to think that 5 people have ever read the Constitution of the United States or California here in the state of California, even though they took an oath to defend it. We got all kinds of things we can talk about, but the income tax is one of the things I like to talk about, but we also have problems in the California legislature. They have so many bills coming up, and I don't know if we've talked about those on the program before, but there's some idiotic things happening come January. And I don't know why California's continue to vote these people in. They're not really helping anybody in the middle class. They're not helping the lower class. They're only helping themselves. I mean, I don't see why it is so hard to see that.
I know how to cure this. Put a model on the train that goes nowhere.
Well, that's right. Well, Justice Hugo Black once said, "Loyalty comes from the love of a good government, not fear of a bad one." I think people in California do fear the government here for some reason, because I talk to people, and most of them, they get kind of fearful in their eyes, like, well, gee, that's something California frowns on. Well, that's not California. California is the people. It's you, it's me, it's everybody listening, and it's not those people in Sacramento that are pushing some agenda that they have. I mean, I think Governor Brown spent more time representing outside of California than representing people here. I just don't see what the problem is with, representing the people that voted you in.
Well, the problem, as I see it, Steve, is accountability. Nobody holds these officials accountable. And we have the power to do that, as we mentioned in our last show last week with Paul. And when you become knowledgeable, you show your power and you can use it, and it works.
It can work very well. And we do really encourage people to understand the Constitution. It's not that hard to read. You try to read the statutes Sacramento's putting out or Washington D.C.'s putting out, it makes your head spin. I mean, it's like runs in circles. But the Constitution is fairly clearly written. There may be some words you don't understand, but you can look them up pretty easily. But the Constitution is unlike any document in the world. The people in the United States have more power in their hands than any other country in the world. And the problem is that I see is the education system is not teaching that any longer. When I went through school, I learned about the Constitution. I learned about the Declaration of Independence. Today, the young people are very anti-Constitution. I go to universities and talk sometimes, and even when I talk about the Constitution, some of them get very angry. They think we're the worst country in the world. Well, where would they get that from? It had to be the instructors, these college professors that have never worked outside of the government in their life. I mean, the college professing, a lot of that is government. So um, I don't really understand why people would believe these things so much. But on the other hand, you hear it over and over and over again by a lot of the media. That's why I think 1680 is such a great place to go for news, because it's got a lot of information on you're not going to hear on CNN, MSNBC, or even Fox News for that matter, or the 6 o'clock news. So I think we can do a lot now with the IRS, Free Enterprise Society. We've done quite a bit. And that's at freeenterprisesociety.com. You can look up some of the things we're doing with the income tax. But we've won a lot of cases. We've gotten millions of dollars property back from the IRS who illegally seized it. We've kept 26 people out of jail that they tried to put in jail. They can be beat, but it takes a certain kind of person to want to fight them and a certain kind of person that want to help defend.
Well, you got
A
that
lot of
right.
attorneys, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I wanted to go into one thing here because you brought up the Constitution. I'm going to read from the Constitution of the state of California, specifically Article 1. Then I'm going to branch out a little bit. All people are free by nature and independent and have inalienable rights. I'm going to go into that in a second. Among these are enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining safety, happiness, and privacy. Now, this is Article 1 of the California Constitution. Now, do you understand what the word inalienable means? Now, I look at it as unalienable, which is, I'll have right here in front of me, and I'll read it. Things which are not in commerce as public roads are in their nature unalienable. Some things are unalienable in consequence of particular provisions in the law forbidding their sale or transfer, a pension granted by government. The natural rights of life and liberty are unalienable. That's Bouvier's Law of a Dictionary, 1856 edition. Now, how about the word that the government banners around? Inalienable. Is it the same as unalienable? Not on your life. Inalienable rights. Rights which are not capable of being surrendered or transferred without the consent of one possessing such rights. You see the difference right off the bat? You can sell, you can surrender, sell, or transfer inalienable rights if you consent either actually or constructively. Inalienable rights are not inherent in man and can be alienated by government. See the difference there? The government can take away your rights if they're inalienable. And that's what they teach in the schools, inalienable. Unalienable, they can't do that. So this is one of the major stumbling blocks in the education of people, especially in the public schools. And speaking of public schools, let's branch off a little bit. In my estimation, all the schools in this country are public schools. Why say? Because the churches are separate. Other entities are separate. They can supposedly have their own schools. But here's the kicker. They all have to get a license from government to practice. So in essence, they have to do what the government says if they want any funding from it or to keep the strong arms out. So think about it. Aren't all schools government schools? Have you ever been involved in homeschooling? I have, and it works very well. But the government eventually sneaks in under the tent, puts their nose in there, and then pretty soon here you are, following government dictates on a private organization, a private school, and so forth. And the Constitution is very plain. Government cannot get into the practice of religion or the forbidding of it. Steve?
The school systems used to have, they did the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. The courts have said we can't do that. We would do we would a lot of times do prayers at the school. Well, the school said we can't do that. We'd do that at the football games as a player. We would pray on the football field before we went on to the court said we can't do that now. I see a problem here because
A huge problem.
well, these are principles of life and morality, comes from those type of documents and the Bible and that kind of thing. To to stop using that and come up with your own morality. I mean, Madonna, for example, thinks she's a moral guide for young women, which is kind of frightening.
Kind of far-fetched to my estimation.
So, but anyway, the Department of Education was a problem from the start. President Reagan wanted to get rid of the Department of Education. Trump wants to get rid of it as well. He just found out the president really doesn't have the power to do it. The president sets up a cabinet, but once he does that, he can't get rid of it. And now the Department of Education said they're never going to mess with California schools or local schools here, but they have done that now with what they call Common Core. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Common Core is a computerized system that Microsoft really supported because Microsoft computers go into every school in the country. That's pretty much done. The software, I don't know who wrote the software. But it's, a lot of school teachers and stuff, I suppose. And it only really deals with reading, writing, and arithmetic. Sounds pretty harmless. But there's a lot of anti-Americanism in the classes. There was a legislator out of Oklahoma that I talked to, and he said they were at a public meeting or a school board meeting talking about Common Core because he really does not like it. And they had some text from a school book for fourth grade girls. And it was so pornographic that even the principal would not read it out loud in a public meeting with adults. That's pretty bad. But they expect 10-year-old girls that's part of their curriculum. That's okay and approved by them by Common Core.
That's part of their brainwashing.
I think it is because now the younger people are starting to learn that the United States is a bad country, that we're terrible and we treat other countries poorly, which is not true. There's no country that treats other countries better. And even in a war, when we have a war and we win the war, we rebuild them and give them back their country. No country does that. I mean, it seems ridiculous from some points of view, but we do it because that's the way that we are, and that's the way we're raised. We were a Christian nation. They're trying to take that away. And the whole principle of our country was do unto others as you would do unto yourself. But that's changing. We have riots in the street. We've got people beating up. We've got gangs on the internet to hurt people and to attack stores. And nobody seems to be doing anything about it, police-wise, that is, in some parts of the country. And so education is very important, and we may have to get back to getting rid of the government schools. A lot of parents that I know have already taken their kids out of public school, and my kids were never in public school. They may be illiterate, but they're not going to be indoctrinated, I figured.
Well, I had a person on this program very early in our series, Irene. You probably remember Irene. She's a fellow Toastmaster, and she homeschooled all of her kids. And they came in as guests to the Toastmasters, and you could not believe the difference in those children. They were just very aware, very alert, and very knowledgeable. And they didn't get any of this malarkey, as the word is going around on the public media now, from Irene or her homeschooling program. And it works very, very well. And you can teach the kids your values, which is the way it's supposed to be, not somebody else's. And they show that, and they show what they can do. So just try to stay away from the public schools if you can. And hopefully we can get something done on this. I hear some music in the background, so I think we're going to be going on a break. Take it away with the ads, and be sure to listen to these ads and call in 442-1680 Talk Radio. Thank you.
Zone. people like me and millions of other Americans are upset, annoyed, and looking for answers.
The O'Reilly Update, afternoons at 3:45. Talk Radio 1680 KGED.
The Enterprise Society exists to educate Americans about the importance of the U.S. Constitution. This is the formula, if you will, that made this country the greatest country the world has ever seen. We are not supposed to be like the rest of the world. You can get more information at my website. We're also funded by people like you. We have a membership. We can help you with some IRS problems. We also need donations and benefactors to continue this work. So if you want to abolish the income tax, check us out. If you have questions, feel free to contact me. But anyway, thanks for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, no, I guess we're still playing house. Sorry about that.
This is Jim Franklin. You've always wanted to own a money-making business. Well, now is the time to do it, or to sell that great business that you've built. It's time to call Roger Story at Investment Commercial Specialist at 559-285-5744. He has 40 years of experience and a track record for matching great investments with great people. He has qualified buyers ready to buy now. He's a certified business opportunity appraiser. That means he can value your business or help you acquire a new business at the right price. Roger is a certified tax specialist, so he can structure transactions to your advantage. Plus, he has the best financing available. Call Roger now, 559-285-5744. I've worked with Roger for more than 20 years, and I can highly recommend him. Confidentiality is strictly observed. 559-285-5744. It pays to work with a specialist. DRE number 003-60818. Bill O'Reilly is back on the radio.
We're going to fight back.
And he's on Talk Radio 1680 KGED.
Let me just throw you my best shot.
The O'Reilly Update, weekday afternoons at 3:45. Talk Radio 1680 KGED.
Welcome back to Personalities in the News, ladies and gentlemen. I see we have a person on the line. I think I've talked to you once or twice before and look forward to it this evening. Steve, you're on the air.
How you doing, Truman?
I'm doing.
Hey, I'm enjoying the conversation about the constitutions that we have in the states and federal government and the power that they have, but as it's been talked about, is nobody knows how to follow through. You have the redress of grievances, and the problem with that is you've got rules and procedures to follow, and the legal part there, people don't understand and how to use their redress of grievances. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why these states get by with what they do. Now, you guys are pretty lucky there in California, but here in Illinois, in our Bill of Rights, Section 5, it tells us that we have the right to our opinions to our representatives, and we have the right to apply. We get to apply for redress of grievances here in Illinois. So even though our government's doing wrong, we have to apply, which means that they can take them or discard them. So there's the problem right there, trying to hold government accountable.
Yeah, well, the root of that problem goes back to the 14th Amendment. If you remember, I brought that up last week. I don't have it right in front of me, but the 14th Amendment brought about a lot of things, and it made the people who applied to the government or whatever persons. That amendment was brought in to keep corporations so they could be represented by attorneys and lawyers. Therein lies the problem. Then in 1871, the government formed itself into a corporation itself, pulling itself from under the Constitution. That's a major, major problem right there. Then you have all the things that happened in 1913, 33, several times. Without a constitutional amendment, they just did it. And they took away most of the rights. Well,
they did away with common law in I believe it was 1845 under the 28th Congress. They took the common law and turned it into admiralty law.
Well, but you see, they also brought that in for the same reason. And in order to be, shall we say, under that, you have to be in a corporate situation. Because all of the property went into the government in the 30s, with our first, in my estimation, communist president. So there's a lot there, and there's a lot that has to be done. The people really, like you say, are afraid to stand up and speak up, and they are taught that in the schools. And the education, in my estimation, is the major problem in this country. What do you think, Steve?
Oh, yeah. And you were talking about the Department of Education. That department is not constitutional. It had to have been created in 1979 anyhow.
That's correct.
And in fact, probably almost all the agencies, Department of Energy, the FDA, CDC.
Yeah, but you see,
firearms.
Yes, but
all of
those came in because of the defaulting to the United States, not the United States of America. The United States is a corporation, and that's all the people.
Right.
All the people know. They don't know anymore. Steve Humphrey, what have you got to say about that?
Yeah.
Well, I can't disagree with it. I mean, the problem, the Constitution sets up a system of government where it's from the bottom up. I mean, the county sheriff has more power than the state legislature, the way the founders put this country together. And the state has more power than the federal government in most areas, except what the federal Constitution gave to the federal governments explicitly. Other than that, they don't have it. In fact, the 9th and 10th Amendment clearly say that. If we forgot to not give you something on the federal level, you don't have it. It's reserved to the states or reserved to the people. And, some states are starting to stand up against the federal government in one way or another. California is one of them. But I don't know that it's the way they're doing it is really something I'm interested in. But the Constitution allows you to pursue happiness, which means you can go out and do things. You can set up a business, you can do things without a whole lot of problems. And that's all changing too. Now, California's passed several laws to interfere with your business. They've changed the way that you can contract with people. For the most part, they banned outlawed contracting in California altogether coming next year. And you have to register to get bullets. These kind of things don't protect the people. All the government should be doing is protecting your property, your liberty, and giving you an opportunity to make it safe so you can provide for your family. They're not there to register bullets. I mean, I don't even get it. I mean, what does that really do for anybody? Or guns? I mean, the criminals don't follow these laws. I mean, it just is a vicious circle of these legislators, busybodies. But criminals that you're directing a lot of these laws to do not follow the law. That's why they're called outlaws. The law-abiding people want to follow the law, but some of them are ridiculous. The plastic straws. I mean, thank God we've saved the world now in California by getting rid of plastic straws. It makes people feel good, I suppose. But I don't think.
Yeah, Steve, I think Sue Ann just signed in on the radio, on the telephone. Sue Ann, are you there? Oh, she's not there yet. Excuse that, but she will be coming in shortly and just having this discussion with us. Now, you heard me mention at the start of the program the common thread that follows through all of these things. Like Steve says, it's basically the Constitution. But where do you find writing on that? Okay, we'll get into something that Steve left a message for me here, the fellow that was just on. We'll get back to him if he comes back. We're going to talk about a little bit, when Sue Ann comes back on especially, Supreme Court of California, January, term 1857, Billings versus Hall. And what this is about, I'll read it. The Amendatory Act does not divest rights vested under the old law or statutes of limitations affect the remedy and not the right. The provisions of the Settlers Act of 1856 requiring the party recovering an ejectment to pay the defendant the value of the improvements. Now, we were talking about this when we were doing the Mendota thing, which I think Sue Ann might be coming in shortly. And it seems that they are not in violation of the provisions of the federal Constitution, prohibiting states from passing laws impairing the obligation of contracts. And this country has gone. Everything's all contract. When you apply for any benefit from any entity in the government, state, federal, local, you become subject to those provisions. And then what does subject to mean? It means slavery. And that's what it's all about. When all these things in this Billings decision from the Supreme Court of California, way back in the 1850s, they were advised of the law about zoning issues and what the people had to do according to them. And I think Sue Ann is on the line now. Sue Ann, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to talk on this for a moment? I got the Billings right in front of me, and you might comment on what you got done in Mendota because of it.
Well, that particular case was when I read that case, I then understood what a constitutional government was. And in that case, there's a lot of what they call dicta. Dicta is what the court gives you as to what is the way things are supposed to run. So when you read that case, it is very specific that the minute that the government starts to interfere with, and there's one other thing, but the idea is that when they begin to get involved in those things, they are no longer a constitutional government. Now, we talk about the government. Well, the government is not those servants out there who's supposed to be taking care of us. We are the government. We are the government because it says so in the Constitution. You are the government. The officials in whatever department they're in is your public servant. But they don't want you to know that because you will talk to them as if they can't do anything to you. And they don't like that. And it's like I have a little sticker that I have on my car. And today I was at Good Guys, and this gentleman happened to see the sticker. And then he called it to the attention of the repairman that was working on my car, and they read it, okay? And then later, the original gentleman that noticed it came and talked to me, and we talked about it. And he says, I had a client that understood and went through and did all the things that needed to be done. And I don't know who he was, but he came from Tulare. And he said he figured it all out, and he said he was free. And he said, and he's just passed away recently. And so, whatever he has, he took with him. And that's what we do not want to do. We don't want to take it with us. We want to share it with everybody out there that's willing to listen. And that is so important, because if you understand that you are the government, and those people in a government, what you call the government offices, they are your servants, and they do not like to know.
That's true. They just really don't like it when you approach them that way. Matter of fact, some of them become outright belligerent, and if it's a supposed peace officer, he really gets uptight about it because he's got the power of arrest, but they misuse that too.
Okay, I want to talk about the police officer.
Good.
Do you know what the police officer is?
Do I know what a peace officer is?
Actually, what he is.
Go ahead.
He is a security guard for the city or the state. He's just a security guard. He's nothing more than a security guard. But they made him so important. The only one that has any lasting duty is the sheriff's office.
That's correct.
All police officers. Now, you know that in 1934 was when police officers began to come into effect, and it started in Chicago, Illinois.
That's quite true.
Prior to that, there were no police officers. There was just the sheriff's office.
Well, now
So
you've got
the only one that has any authority is the sheriff's office. The rest are just security guards or revenue agents.
there you go. That's what they do in the traffic situation, and most anything else that is not a crime as defined in the penal code. Everything else is civil.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they really get carried away with this stuff. And the main thing is the people just acknowledge it. They just go along with it. They bow down to these people and say, yes, sir, no, sir, and here's my papers and so forth and so on. And I think that's atrocious. Steve, any comments on what Sue Ann has brought up here?
Well, no, I like what she's talking about. I mean, the thing is, the police were there to protect us if they're there for any reason. They're not there to harass us. And I think they're being taught the wrong thing. I've had a police officer once arrest me and arrested my car, too. You remember that?
Oh, yeah, I was involved in that.
But the thing is, I wasn't doing anything. I mean, yeah.
Well, you were making a left turn into a parking lot.
An unsafe left turn when he's why he stopped me, but I did not have a piece of paper which said California driver's license on it, which I didn't feel that it was required.
It isn't.
Is somebody else talking?
Yeah, that's Sue Ann. She just commented it isn't, which we know.
And well, yeah, they couldn't prove anything. We went to court over it. You helped me get my car back, the van. But when we was in court, I sued the deputy. It was a sheriff deputy, and the sheriff's deputy, that's not really that common, that a sheriff deputy actually does that kind of traffic patrol. But anyway, I sued the sheriff's deputy. We talked about that with the county in depositions and things. Well, does the officer learn anything about constitutional rights of individuals? And they said, well, sure we do. But he didn't really know what they were when we talked about it. But it was kind of interesting because he took a very adversarial position to me when we sued him. But as time went on, I mean, it wasn't a personal thing to me because I want the Constitution to start becoming more approved and more used because that's what makes this country great. So I'd go ahead and shake this deputy's hand every time we got together in the court or depositions, and he was kind of didn't want to do that. But after a while, he would be the first one to put his hand out because he got used to it and understood what I was trying to do, I think. Because I did give him a copy of the Constitution because I'm assuming he never actually read it.
Even though he took an oath to it.
But, we fought that court case down and it finally kind of petered out, I guess. But the problem there is, I mean, the judges and everybody think when the government says something that's absolutely correct and that they have authority to do anything they want to me or my property, which is contrary to what the Constitution says, and that is we have an absolute right to own that property, as opposed to health care is not a right that I find in the Constitution or welfare or any of these other things. You have a right to pursue happiness, but that doesn't guarantee you it's not a right to have happiness at the expense of anyone else, which is what's happening today.
That's the main thrust of that provisions in the Constitution. You have to respect everyone else's rights the same as you would like yours. That's the golden rule.
Every other country is socialist or communist, and that is government from the top down, and there are people, most of them on the bottom, not doing too well. And in this country, we have the largest middle class of any country ever.
That's quite true.
And while we followed the Constitution. But we're getting all away from that, and we're losing our middle class. The middle class is becoming destitute. They can't even, both man and wife have to work these days and all that, and they can barely pay their bills or keep their property tax or keep their house going. And in the 60s, when we had a little more Constitution, one man's income one man could make enough that it provided for his whole family, bought a house, a car, a motorhome, whatever. And that's changed. That's just not working anymore.
It's gone, actually, unless you are way up there in the financial stratosphere.
But again, I mean, we just think you can look this up on the internet on Google, the U.S. Constitution. They have it all over the place. We have it on our website at freeenterprisesociety.com. And the first 10 amendments, a lot of people don't even know this, is the Bill of Rights. And that's how important they are.
Okay, we're getting some music again, so we're going to be taking a short break here for some ads. Be sure listen to the ads. Do business with these people. They help support us for your listening pleasure, and we shall return after this is over.
And two Seahawks pay a visit to the Los Angeles Rams. Can Russell Wilson and Seattle stay undefeated in NFC West play? Or will the 7-5 Rams improve their playoff hopes with a much-needed win? Join us to find out and hear the NFL all season from Westwood One.
Free Enterprise Society exists to educate Americans about the importance of the U.S. Constitution. This is the formula, if you will, that made this country the greatest country the world's ever seen. We are not supposed to be like the rest of the world. You can get more information at my website. We're also funded by people like you. We have a membership. We can help you with some IRS problems. We also need donations and benefactors to continue this work. So if you want to abolish the income tax, check us out. If you have questions, feel free to contact me. Anyway, thanks for listening.
This is Lance Cardoza. Live every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., I bring you Business Leaders Live. I talk to business leaders throughout the Valley and abroad, and we talk about the trials and tribulations of being an entrepreneur, or being in business, or being a creative mind in our Central Valley, and what it takes to be an entrepreneur. Right here on Business Leaders Live on Talk Radio 1680 KGED.
Want the inside scoop on an area? Locals always know. Want an inside advantage in your job search? Then you rely on a staffing local. We're Spherion, a 65-year workforce leader with a distinct local focus. Just last year, we helped 160,000 individuals find exciting careers. I'm Glenna Gates, and my team knows the Central Valley area well. More than a business, this is our home, and we have connections to the area's most respected companies. Gain a local career advantage and call Spherion at 559-251-4040 or visit us on the web at spherion.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Truman Sigler for Personalities in the News. Don't forget to call us in at 442-1680. That's 442-1680 Talk Radio. We have Sue Ann Caesar on the line with us. There was somebody else on the line, but I guess he went away before we got back from commercial. Anyway, if you're still listening to the show or watching, give us a call back. We'd be glad to talk to you. And Sue Ann, would you like to carry on where you let off?
Well, I don't remember where I left off, but there was an issue that I did want to bring up because Steve talked about they do not have the power in Illinois that we have in California. Well, that's not true. He is part of the government, and the government officials owe him a duty, and there is a way to allow that to happen. And you don't go to court because courts are a sham. It's all a sham. And you don't ever go to court. What you do is that you do what is called a notice of liability. And the notice of liability has a portion in it which says if there's a third party wanting to get involved in the case, that they would have to pay $10 million to get involved in the case. So that leaves the guy who's being noticed that he has a liability up in the air, and he can't get anybody to help him out. So then he becomes responsible for it, and eventually what you do is you send them a bill, and after you've done that several times, then you can then do a lien against everything he owns.
Yeah, Sue Ann, can we take a small break here? I got someone calling in. It's probably the person that was there, and then we can come back to you.
Let me finish real quick.
Okay.
Let me finish real quick. And that is called common law. The common law is no longer in the courts. It's in the paperwork that you do to give you an advantage over people who are affecting your liberties. That's all I had to say.
Okay, well, thank you. Just we're going to break off of you for a moment, then we get to Steve,
Sure.
who probably came back on the line from Illinois, I believe. Steve, are you on?
Yeah. You're more welcome just to let her go. She's got some good information there. But
Yes, she does.
I was just wanting to bring up a couple of things here. In our U.S. Constitution, in Article 6, Clause 3, it has a kind of, I kind of call it a safeguard, because it says the senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of several states, legislatures, and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and the several states, shall be bound by oath and affirmation to uphold and support this Constitution. So there was kind of a safeguard there that these states can't veer off of our federal Constitution. And the other thing I wanted to bring up, as Steve was talking about, is how these cities can get fixed when government is going bad. There was a city in Ohio, Amelia, Ohio. Their city or their village voted 843 to 479 to dissolve its government. And this is what I've always thought, and this is kind of backs us up, that the Declaration of Independence was the first document created, and it was created by the people, meant for the government. And this city that dissolved their government there used that Declaration of Independence, where it says when government becomes destructive of its duties. It's the right of the people. And they are free from, they dissolved their whole city council. And they're free of that tyrannical government that they had going on in that city.
What did they replace it with? Anything?
What they did was go to two other counties, and they kind of blended in with those two other counties, according to this article. Now, I'm waiting to talk to the guy that headed up this deal, but I don't see, and I'm not, and maybe Steve there might know, I don't see why a city can't dissolve its government and reinstate the proper form of government as such as he's been talking about.
Steve, you have
what would be his opinion?
Well, I don't know of any process to do that. I mean, a city gets so big, they apply to be a corporation and become a city. Up until that point, the county and the sheriff deputies are responsible to take care of that area. And it would seem to me if the city dissolves a city council, the city borders would go back to under the control of the county. But the sheriffs are financially, they fight those kind of things. I know in Fresno and California here, they don't like doing that because of that they're not getting any funding from Fresno. But if the Fresno City Council were to dissolve, then I would think that Fresno County would get the funding back to the sheriff's department that was going to the city council
to reinstate your de jure Constitution and get rid of the corporate de facto Constitution.
Well, that's, you got the city council, you also have the corporation on the city, and, I would assume they would have to dissolve that if they're going to not have a city council any longer. I mean, I don't know what their plan is. I've never really heard of that. I have heard a lot of counties are now creating what they call sanctuary counties against gun control all over the country.
Yeah.
Hundreds of counties have said, we aren't doing it. And Sheriff's
Ohio
deputies
is
are
who
backing
did
it up.
this. So, okay. I just wanted to mention that to get your opinion on that, because you were talking about how the people can hold their government accountable, and I was always supportive of the Declaration of Independence on that very part where it says when government becomes destructive of its duties, and when I seen this, I'm like, okay, it worked here. So.
Yes.
Go ahead. I appreciate you putting me back on, and have that young lady get back on and finish up what she was talking about. It's very interesting.
Okay, Sue Ann, if you're on the radio or whatever, or hearing us, just call back in. And Steve from back east wanted to have you continue on your topic of thought there. And we're going to move on here. Something I want to bring up that most people don't realize. This comes from the Act for the Admission of California into the Union. Now, I've brought it up before, and I'm going to read it again. And it says, and that all the navigable waters within the said state shall be common highways and forever free, as well as to the inhabitants of said state as to the citizens of the United States, without any tax imposed or duty thereafter. Now that kind of says it all. That's what brought California in. It's still on the books, hasn't been changed, except now that they're a corporation, they are operating under a completely different set of rules and not under the Constitution. Where did the government get the authority to change their form of government without an amendment? And that's a very interesting topic. I haven't seen anything on this stuff that I have read that all happened in the 30s, and it changed our whole form of government. What brought us into
a lot of people don't realize that, and California had to match the federal Constitution to get into the Union, and yeah, there's what's the authority for them to not continue to adhere to the Constitution? I would say that when they're outside of the Constitution, they're not upholding their agreement with the U.S. to become part of that union.
That's right, and nor are they upholding their oath of office to us when they take it. And
well, why do they take it if they haven't read the thing and have no intention? In fact, a lot of them just they spit on the Constitution here in California. They hate the thing.
Yeah, they don't like it.
They think they are king and they can decide for us what we're going to eat and how we're going to eat and how we're going to drink from a cup and
or a straw or no straw. And on and on and on. And
they're
all
really
of these,
bad here. And, other states, Illinois has probably got its own problems, but a lot of states are not as bad as California. But and California needs some help from people around the country, because if California gets away with a lot of this, it's going to spread, and already is spreading around other parts of the country, that these things are good things. And they're not good things. The businesses are leaving California. I mean, over 10,000, I think, a month, and small businesses just packing up and leaving.
Right.
Because they're very hostile to business here in California. So.
Yes, they sure just never go into business. I'm not in business. I'm not a corporate person.
You should be able to. You
That's
should be able to have, put your little shingle out for whatever it is, and be unmolested by the government. But that's just not happening.
It just doesn't happen. I want to bring up one other thing while we're on the subject of back in the 30s and so forth. Now, everyone believes, according to the media and all the books and stuff that have been written and documentaries made, that the attack on Pearl Harbor was a complete surprise. They didn't know it was coming and this and that and everything in. Well, hogwash. When you go back and you see what was going on up in the Bay Area, Tiburon especially, in 1937, what was the government doing? They were putting up submarine nets. That's well documented. Now, if they didn't think a war was coming or weren't getting ready to promote one, why would they be doing that? And this all came about in the 30s with the Democrats in power and just doing whatever they want. And we had Democratic rule clear up until Eisenhower came in. And he warned us, stay away from the military government complex. And what happens? Well, we didn't. And this is what's happening. Sue Ann, are you on yet? No, I guess you went away. Anyway, this whole thing is a charade. When they have pulled themselves out from under the Constitution by chicanery and not by actual due process, this is what we get. Isn't that right, Steve?
I think there's a lot of elected officials that are, not pursuing their oath and taking care of the people. On a national level, Trump is putting America first, and he's being demonized for it. I don't get it. Why would you elect President Trump to represent China or someplace else? He's supposed to represent here. Governor Newsom is supposed to be representing California. Him and Governor Brown seem more concerned about climate change and what's happening in Europe than what's happening here in California with the people leaving and people being unemployed. And even with that, I mean, they're busy passing laws like crazy. We were better off in California when they had that part-time legislature. They went to a full-time legislature because it would be better. Better for who, I wonder? Well, not better for me.
That's right. It's not better for any of us. Now this is a cycle. If you want to look at it that way, that comes and goes with governments and societies and so forth. And I got one thing to say: if you keep repeating history, you are going to keep getting what you're getting, and that's the bottom line. We're getting the call for a break here. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Listen to the ads. Call us in at 442-1680 Talk Radio, and we shall return for the wrap-up of this program.
Exists to educate Americans about the importance of the U.S. Constitution. This is the formula, if you will, that made this country the greatest country the world's ever seen. We are not supposed to be like the rest of the world. You can get more information at my website. We're also funded by people like you. We have a membership. We can help you with some IRS problems. We also need donations and benefactors to continue this work. So if you want to abolish the income tax, check us out. If you have questions, feel free to contact me. But anyway, thanks for listening.
Are you a hero? I think you are. Maybe your hero-ness is lying dormant, but it's there. I can see it. And to be honest, I didn't think I was a hero. But then one day I realized that every day I have the opportunity to make an impact on someone's life. Together, we can make a difference and can save lives. Together, we can be the ultimate superhero team and build a culture of life in our community. And there is such a need for heroes like you. Maybe your superhero strength is one of generosity. Maybe it's simply sharing hope with those who feel they have no hope and seeking to meet people where they are at and just love them. At Pregnancy Care Center, we have an amazing team of superheroes. Client advocates, medical professionals, donors, prayer warriors, all using their unique gifts for the purpose of defending life with compassionate boldness. Will you join our team of superheroes? If you want to learn more about getting involved at Pregnancy Care Center, either as a volunteer or supporter, please call or text 237-0789 or find us online at ministry.pregnancycarecenter.com.
Welcome back to Personalities in the News. I am Truman Sigler, also on with Steve Hempling. Sue Ann is signed off for the evening, I do believe. I want to bring something up that I watched on television, kind of a charade, I think you might call it, when they were having the impeachment hearings. And they had those four college professors, the constitutional college professors nonetheless. And when you listen to those people, you wonder what planet they have come from. The fourth one was more or less, even though he was a Democrat and didn't vote for Trump, he was right on the ball on the Constitution and so forth. It was really an eye-opener. But I have the question, what documentation do these professors get other than having the Constitution, a common dictionary in use at the time, and a piece of paper to explain what the Constitution means? The Constitution was written for 8th graders. Of course, 8th graders at that time is equivalent at least to a bachelor's degree nowadays with this education system. And they go on with all their thoughts and all their postulation and so forth. That wasn't what the Constitution says. It says what the words mean. The Constitution is made up of words, and words have meanings. That's how you explain the Constitution, not some far-fetched idea from your head or something from academia that doesn't do a hoot for us out here on the street. Steve, what do you think?
No, it was well said. These professors, and I've met some of them. I've also spoke to some universities with some of these guys. They really think they're that. I mean, they're all that. They think that, they're the smartest one in the room at all times, many of them, and that, the changes they make to the Constitution, which they do make many, are important. So they're just going to, teach it that way. And in fact, some universities, they get chewed out by these same professors for contradicting something the professor wants you to say. It's not an open dialogue anymore.
No.
But uh, they have no firsthand knowledge of anything. I mean, the Constitution doesn't really prescribe an exact procedure, and I guess it is more or less political, looking at it from that standpoint. But still, you got to have some evidence, and I am really impressed that you could watch those professors. I just dozed off. I tried, but yeah, but Turley was pretty good. Turley
Yes.
at least is trying to be.
He was honest and straightforward.
He read
yeah.
the Constitution. It's pretty
Yeah.
obvious. The other three, I don't think ever actually read it, or if they did, they didn't like it. They wrote their own.
Well, you see, I think what they're doing is what happened to me in one of my court cases. That's the time that I had a public defender supposedly helping me, and he didn't want to bring up what I wanted to bring up, and it was the fact that the words are what defines what the law is, the meanings of the words at the time that the law was put in force. So if all of these highfalutin professors are saying something else, what dictionary are they using? The dictionary that was used against me was a late edition of Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Now that's far cry from a legal dictionary, and the people take that, and the jury made its decision accordingly, and that's wrong. So we got to hold these people in academia, if you want to call it that, accountable. They can't go out preaching against the Constitution. That's insurrection, in my book.
Many of the universities have become basically anti-American training camps, in my view, and I don't know what we can do about that. But something should be done, because they are teaching principles that are not in our Constitution. They're teaching a hatred of our country to those college students. I can tell that by when I speak at the universities. When I talk about the Constitution, many of them just huff and walk off. And some of them are, becoming more and more belligerent about their belief that this is a bad document. But there isn't anything better for the individual than this document that we call the Constitution here. And it was based on biblical principles. And, you just can't, I don't know how to get around the fact that people, obviously they are making what they call uneducated opinions. And I think that's what these university professors do as well. Even though they think they're so educated, I don't think they are all that educated any longer. So,
well, to me, we've got the same thing going on that was going on back in Christ's day. The people went for Barabbas because he was some muscular figure and spoke not with Christ as far as his principles and so forth. And what did the people do? They were dumbed down. They wanted sports figures. They wanted somebody with action, and they voted for Barabbas. And what happened to Christ? What's happening in the country today? Think about it. The same thing is going on today, and we are repeating history. And every society has. Study Rome. Look how they fell from grace, and they had a lot of good things. Same with Greece and all the rest of them. They've all gone asunder from within.
Well, that's why I like to do the seminars. I love this program we're on here with 1680, talking to those people that are in Fresno. We got a lot of listeners here, I understand, and that's a great thing. So there is hope, because the law is not does not allow for a lot of things that are happening today.
Okay, well, I've got the one finger held up at me, which means we have 1 minute, a little bit less than that now. If you like our format and topics, let us know and tell others. Our time is up for this evening. Thanks to Steve and Sue Ann and Steve from back east for his views and opinions. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Tune in next week, same time and stations. Talk Radio 1680 AM and TV channel 32.3 TV. Truman Sigler for Personalities in the News. Good night. Steve, are you there? I think the mics are not hot. I turned mine off for going out over the air. Trying to not get a repeat of what we had last week, if you were watching and listening at the same time. But during the break, there was some conversation going on. But I think we got it whipped this time. You agree?
I don't know.
Well, I watched it today. First time I've watched one of our shows. And we had a little bit of a time there. My voice was raspy and all this kind of stuff. I had to bring you in, but I think we did better tonight. Yeah, no, that's all right. We got some feedback here. Okay, we're not on the air now. No, we're out.
Well, I froze a little bit tonight, but that was my end, so you can tell them it wasn't their end. So.
Okay. Well, we
Yeah,
got
but you
one
sounded,
here.
hey, you sounded really good today. No problems.
We had a call in onto Facebook or something. Valerie Hondi Boyley. Great discussion with knowledgeable, experienced Americans. Surprised there aren't more people watching this. Another one from Fly to Valerie called Top Fan Brenda Angel. It is a radio show, so I am sure many more are listening on the radio than the local television. Yes, I would agree with that. Anyway, I am going to take my headphones off, and you want me to call you when I get home, or we can do it later?
You can, sure.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night. Good show. I enjoyed it.
That was a good one.
Yeah, I've gotten into a lot of arguments and conversations with people on this unalienable thing. Oh, it means the same thing. You know,
Right.
inalienable and unalienable. No, it's not. Look it up in a legal dictionary.